Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 15 of my tutorial on how to make Android apps. Today we're going to do a lot of things. If you didn't watch part 14, in which I created an Android translation app that read JSON data, you should definitely watch that because I'm going to use pretty much the same type of code, except I'm just going to focus in on the XML parsing part. On top of that, in my web services tutorial, I showed you how to generate JSON data. This time, I'm going to go in and write the PHP that's going to show you how to generate XML data. So a lot of things are going to be covered here. I'm going to jump over, show you what the app looks like, and then start coding. Okay, so here's the finished application. At the top, you're going to be able to type in whatever you want translated, then hit the translate button. I'm just going to type in, I saw a bird fly, just to be something simple to type in here. And then I'm going to click on translate, and it's going to translate into all the different languages. So you can see here Arabic, Chinese, Danish, Dutch, and if I get rid of the keyboard, you can also see French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. So a whole bunch of translations. So let's take a look at the XML. Okay, so you saw the application, and this is the XML data that we're going to want to generate inside of PHP. And you can see right here, I typed in, I saw a bird fly right there, and it automatically kicked out all the XML right here with all the translations. So the first thing I'm going to do is jump over and write all the PHP code to generate that. And this is coming from part 6 of my web services tutorial. I'm just adding on the part that handles the XML or generating the XML. And I'll put a note here on where you could jump if you just are interested in the Java part of this tutorial. So let's get into it. Okay, so this is translateIt.php, and I'm not going to go through everything. I'm just specifically going to cover how to generate the XML that we just saw here just a second ago. So what I'm going to do is I am going to create a function, and it's going to be called getXMLTranslations. Don't think I've ever done a tutorial like this with two different languages, so kind of interesting, for me at least. And I'm trying to, cover things in the real world. You don't just use one language to do all this stuff. You need a whole bunch of languages. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a languages array, and this is going to have all the tag names that are going to surround the actual translations, just like you just saw. If you need to rewind a little bit to see what that XML looks like, go ahead and do that. And I know this information is in a specific order. I just have it in alphabetical order here. I'm going to put in all of these tag names. So Danish and Dutch, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. So there you go. Have all those set up. Then I need to create another array here. I'm going to call it translations array, and it's going to hold all of my translations. So there we go. And then I'm going to use a for each block here to cycle through all of the languages that I have right here in that array. So language array as, give them the temporary name of language. And all the code is available in a link under the description. And then I'm going to go with the translations array, and I'm going to be able to call get translation again by passing in the language that I want translated to along with the English words. And if this isn't making sense, it's because I covered this in the web services tutorial. So if we want to be able to use web services to do cool things like this, we need to learn PHP if we don't know it. And just as a rehash here, get translation, we come up here, get translations right here, and what it's passed is the language you want translated to and the English words that you want translated. Then basically what it does is it finds the indexes for those English words inside of the database, spits back those indexes, and then it calls another function called getAllTranslations. See that right here? And then it translates them in by just looking for the exact index in the Arabic part of the database, the Chinese database, the Danish, the Dutch, and all the other ones. So it's a one-for-word translation, or a one-for-one word translation. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Surprisingly good, I guess I should say. Alright, so now I have all the translations stored in this array just by passing in the language I want translated to and English words. Now I need to define the tags that I want to surround my XML data. And I'm just going to create a variable called XML and make it a new simple XML element. And what this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, I want all of this information surrounded by a tag with the name translations. And then you just put this little closing bracket here, and there that is. And you can see exactly right here what it's doing. It's putting that there, and it's putting that there, and then all this other data we're going to generate next. Now I'm going to define let's just make it language index. I'm going to define this iterator. It's going to start off at 0. Now what I'm going to do is take each translation and put it in between the correct language tags. And to do that, again, for each. And I'm going to go with the translations array as translations. So I'm going to get each one of those translations out of there. Then I can refer to the XML by adding a child for each of the different translations. And in this situation, I'm just going to go language array, and then I'll use the language index, and then the specific translation. So the way this works is this guy right here, language array, as you can see here, there's language array. It's going to define the tag that is going to surround the data that is inside of the translations array part. So this is defining the tag, this is defining what goes in between the tags. So here we can just go translation, and then all I need to do is increment the index to make sure that I get the right tag in the beginning of it. Alright, so now that I have all of those generated, what I can do is generate a DOM document that's going to style the information for me. And a DOM document just represents an entire XML document. So I'm just going to call this DOM, and then call DOM import simple XML. And then all you have to do now is pass in the XML that you just generated there with all the child elements and the proper tags and everything there. Then if we want the information to be indented, we just go DOM and format output equal to true. And all that does is indent it. And then we can return this information by going DOM-save XML. It's just going to convert the XML into a string that we'll be able to print the screen. So pretty good here. And now the only other thing we're going to need to do is provide the option to ask for the XML. Translate just translates one line of text. Translations gets every translation for whatever words are passed inside of it. So what we're going to have to do now is create another one that's going to handle the XML. And I'm going to call this XML translations. So if that is passed in as the action that we want to perform inside of PHP, I'm going to go and get my English words and decode the URL, and then go get the English words that are passed through the URL. And that is what this is. See, it says English words right here, and I just want to come in here and decode that, which basically just means get rid of the plus signs. Then I'm going to call get XML translations. So I'll go translations, or translated text sounds good. And remember, if I call get XML translations, it's going to pass back a string to me, and all I need to do is pass in English words to it. And then since I'm going to be passing XML data here and nothing else has been done yet, I can call header and content type. And here I'm going to be working with XML, so I'm going to go text XML. That's going to make sure it comes out properly. And then also I want to make sure that my character set is set for UTF-8, so all of the foreign characters show up there on the screen and look nice. And then I can break out of this, and then whenever we come down here, we can echo out the translated text. And that's all it took to be able to provide XML from inside of PHP. And of course, if you have any confusion, this is heavily commented, and there's a link to it in the description below. So now let's go in and create the Java app or Android application that's going to take all of this XML data and use it inside of our app. Alright, so here we are inside of Android Studio. Here's the strings.xml file. Everything is basically the same from the last tutorial in which I was working with JSON. Here's the activity my. All I did here was change the names a little bit, but you can see over here that the app basically looks exactly the same, and you just saw the app at the beginning of this tutorial. So there's all of those different things. Like I said, the names were changed a little bit, nothing else was changed. Android manifest is exactly the same. The only change we're making from part 14 is not here. This is where we're asking for permission to use the internet. However, we are making some changes here inside of myActivity.java. Not many, but we are making some. Very first thing that we did change here is we are calling getXMLData, which is going to be the new class that extends async task or asynchronous tasks. Otherwise, everything else here is exactly the same. So we'll come down inside of here and I'll show you exactly how I'm going to work with this new version that's going to parse XML. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is select here, and that's going to tell me that I need to import a new method, so implement methods. And doing backgrounds right there, so I want that generated. And then I'm also going to come in here and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say generate, and I'm going to say that I want to override methods, and I'm also going to want to, just like last time, onPostExecute is also going to be created. So there that is, and I'm going to take onPostExecute and put it after doInBackground, because it makes more sense for me to do that. And I'm going to go through here and void and all this stuff. I already talked about this in part 14. So part 14, you have to watch it before you can watch this. Just makes a lot of sense. So basically what we have here with doInBackground or async task, it's just going to allow us to perform more than one task at a time without locking up the user interface. So it basically provides a way for us to work with a thread that's in the background. So that's it. The void I'll talk about here briefly. This is saying right here, this void is saying that this doInBackground does not accept any parameters passed into this function. This void right here says that we are not in any way going to monitor progress or provide that information, and this void here says that when onPostExecute is executed after doInBackground finishes, it is not going to be passed anything either. So the first thing we're going to have to do here is get a string that is going to display all of the translations inside of our application. So I need to get out of PHP mode and stop putting $ inside of there. And I'm going to go string to print, and this is just going to be nothing for now. Actually, let's put this outside of here because that's going to be used by these other methods in this class. Then inside of here is going to be another string, and this is going to hold the XML string that's going to be retrieved from the web service that we just created. So XML string, and there's nothing in there right now. And I'm going to do a little bit of what I covered in part 14, but not all of it. Okay, then we're going to have our words to translate. And this is going to be passed into our Android application by the user. Then we're going to have to go with our editable text, and this is how we're going to get the words that we need to translate. Let's call this translate edit text, and we need to convert it into an editable text like that. And then of course find view by ID, and then it's going to be r.id. And then I called this words edit text. So there that is. Okay, so now that we have that, we're going to be able to get the words that they want translated. Then we're going to store those in words to translate by calling translate edit text and get text and then to string. So now we have those all set up. We of course want to replace any spaces with plus signs. So words to translate is going to be equal to words to translate. And we'll say replace because this is going to be passed into the web service, so that's why we're doing it this way. We're replacing the spaces that were in the editable text box between all the words with plus signs so we can pass them in the URL. And then just like before, we're going to have to create ourselves a client, which is kind of like a web browser and how it's going to read data. That's sort of the way this works. It's going to grab data based off of a provided URL that is sent to it. And I'm going to call this HTTP client is equal to new, and this is going to be default HTTP client. And then inside of this, you're just going to say I would just want a basic parameters for this guy. Have that set up. Very shortly, I'll get into the specifics of using the XML part here. So this is going to be post. This is going to provide the URL for the post request. HTTP post is equal to new HTTP post. And then inside of this guy, we are going to put the beginning of the URL that we're going to be calling. So let's just come in here, jump over here, do just in. This is my web service, and I'm going to come down to this part right there where the equal sign ends. In here, paste that in there, and there we have it. And then at the very end of this, I'm then going to tack on the words to translate, and they're all surrounded or separated with plus signs. So that's how that goes. Okay, so we have the URL, we have the client set up. We're then going to define the type of data that it is expected, and this time, last time we used JSON, this time we are going to be using XML. So to set XML, we're going to go content type like that, and then this time we'll say text /XML. So that will be used as XML. We're now getting into creating our input stream. It's going to allow us to input a stream of bytes from the URL. And let's just call this input stream. It's equal, this null. There we go. And now we're going to be doing a whole bunch of things that could break. So we're going to use a try block. Again, HTTP response is going to be sent back any results when the client calls for the post request. Call that response is equal to, and then we're going to call the client, and then we're going to tell the client to execute the URL that we already defined for ourselves. I love code completion. And then this is going to give me an error saying, hey, you're going to need to come in here and throw in a catch clause. Okay, fine, there that is. Create an HTTP entity, which is going to hold the message that are sent back. in our response, just call this entity, and to get it, we go response and get entity. Then we'll come in here and get the content that was actually sent back to us. And to do that, we go entity and get content, that is. And as you can see here, we're using the same sort of things. We're using buffered readers, we're using editing. It doesn't matter if it's JSON or XML, you're basically going to retrieve the information in exactly the same way. And whenever we get to the XML specific way of doing this, it's going to be very nice and easy. It's going to be surprising. It's going to be great. So we're going to go input stream reader, just like before. And in here, we just like we did previously, put in our input stream, and then specifically say, hey, we're using UTF-8 here, and then define our buffer size as 8 bytes. There we go. We're going to use a string builder just like last time, and might as well give it the same name, is equal to new string builder. It's going to store each line, and those lines are going to be stored temporarily in this string with the name line. And then we'll come in here and create a while loop that is going to continue to get lines of text or XML, read line, as long as they exist or aren't equal to null. As we get each of these, we're going to append them to the end of our string builder. Don't need to do anything else there, because now we have our string. And it's a great big giant string with our XML data inside of it. So that means we want to save those results inside of the XML string, which is just a string that we're going to store everything in by calling toString on this guy. Now what we're going to need to do is generate an XML parser, and the way you do that is XML pull parser factory, and this factory creates XML parsers, which just takes the data from the XML that we pass inside and makes sense of it. Pull parser factory, and you call new instance. New instance just creates a new XML pull parser. And this is going to say, hey, you might have an exception here, you better catch it. Add catch clause. It does it for me. We're going to say here that we want it to be able to support namespaces, which is just a unique way to define that data belongs to a certain person or not. That's all a namespace is. It's like a social security number for data. Now we want to gather the XML data and provide information on that data. So with the XML pull parser, call it XPP, like Android likes to call it, factory, and call new pull parser. We're now going to pass in the XML for parsing. So set input, new, string reader, and pass in the XML data that we saved as a string. Now the way everything's read here is as things are event types. So the very start of the XML document is going to have the event type equal to start of document. The very end of the document, an XML document, is going to have end document as the event type. And you can also have start tag, which is the starting tag, and end tag, which is the ending or enclosing tag, and then the text, which is going to be the data that's stored between the tags. Okay, so event types are either start of document, end of document, start of a tag, end of a tag, or text. That's it. All right, so event type, whenever it starts off, it's going to be start of document. So we'll get event type. Now what we need to do is create a while loop and cycle through all of these event types until we get to the end of the document. So it makes 100% sense. So we're going to say while event type is not equal to, and then we can go XML pull parser dot end document. Just like that, we're going to continue cycling through all of the tags and all the data that is inside of our XML document. So if this is our XML right here, it's going to first off hit start of document up here or wherever. Then it's going to hit a start tag. That start tag is going to be called translations. We don't care about that. We're only interested in the first one here, which is Arabic. We also want to ignore the end tag right here. So what we want to do is come in here, skip the translations, also skip the start document, and then find the very next tag, and then whenever we find that, we want to print out Arabic with a colon and the translation. Chinese with a colon and then the translation. So that's what we have to do with our code right now. So we already said that we want to skip through the different events or the different tags inside our XML document until we get to end of document, and then we're going to stop looking for them because there are no more. So how are we going to do this? Well, then we're going to say if event type, like that, is equal to XML pull parser dot start tag. There's all the different tags. But remember, we want to skip the very first one because we don't care about translations. We don't want to print translations out inside of our app. And not XPP get name. That's how we can get the name of a tag. So we're saying that we want to get the start tag, and then we want to get the name of that tag, and we want to check that that name is not equal to translations. If it's not translations, but it is a start tag, that means we do want it because that is going to be the language or the language tags that are going to surround the translation that we both want. And getName is going to return to us the name of the current element that we have focus on, which is a starting tag. So it's going to get us the name for the tag. Then what we'll do is the string to print, we're going to make it string to print plus, and we want to go and get that name inside of there, which is going to be the language. And then let's put a colon right inside of there. Else, if the event type is equal to XML pull parser dot text, that means it's text between tags. Well, in that situation, we know that that is a translation. So we're going to go string to print is equal to string to print plus, and then let's go in and get that text. And how we get the text is go xpp get text, which is going to give us our translation. And then let's say we want to throw a new line in there at the end of that. And that's basically all we're going to need to do because the while loop's going to handle getting to the end of the document. And if you want to switch to the next element inside of our XML document, we just go in here and go event type is equal to xpp, the pull parser, and call next, which tells it to go to the next element in the XML document. And a couple other little things here, and we're almost done. I have to put a couple other little possible problems we have here. So we're also going to catch a malformed URL exception, and we can just print the stack trace again in that situation. I'm also going to catch unsupported encoding exception. I don't believe that's there, and that is specific to the UTF-8. Doesn't seem like Android Studio is set up to worry about encoding, but I know a lot about it because anytime you work with translations or UTF-8 in general, you have to know this stuff. And print stack trace. And client protocols here, IO exception, XML pull parser exceptions also inside of there, so everything else is covered. And there that is. Well, I think that'll cover all the possible exceptions we have here. And of course, come in here and put ease. And there we go. Return null just like before. And the other thing we need to do is down here inside of onPostExecute, which is called after doing background is done executing. We're going to have it go in and update the text view inside of our app and show all the translations. And of course, if we want to do that, we're going to have to create a text view object that's going to allow us to go in there and change that. So translate text view, and it needs to be cast into a text view. And of course, find view by ID. Things like find view by ID and everything should be 100% natural for you by this point if you've worked through a lot of these tutorials. And as time goes by, you will remember lots more. And with code completion, you should basically be able to come in here and look at a sequence diagram and just create whatever you want. And set text and string to print. Okay guys, there it is. No errors, everything's set up, and I'm not going to bother executing it because you saw that at the very beginning of this tutorial. So all the code is available in the description underneath the video, and please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.